What's good? What's good? Welcome to the script, the unfiltered, the unscripted, and the unapologetically real. Each week, the script dives headfirst in the stories shaping our lives, from the headlines lighting up your feed to the love dramas unfolding in your DMs. Powered by real talk and raw perspective, this live experience blends culture, commentary, and community with a pulse on what matters now. Whether it's politics, relationships, or the internet's latest hot mess, we are breaking it all down with insight, humor, and just enough side eye. This isn't just a show, it's your front row seat to the conversation you didn't know you needed. Now, before we dive into tonight's topics, I want to take a moment to shout out our incredible partner, blackdoctor.org. Now, if you're not familiar, blackdoctor.org is the leading health and wellness resource for the Black community, reaching millions every month with culturally relevant content that empowers, educates, and uplifts. Their mission is simple: to make health and healing more accessible by speaking directly to the unique experiences from Black families, from chronic illnesses to mental health, nutrition, to self-care. Blackdoctor.org is about taking control of our well-being with information we can trust and voices that look like ours. I'm proud to be a part of this platform and to bring you the script every week in collaboration with BDO, because in a world where everybody's talking, we're committed to making sure that what you hear actually matters. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about the space in between, right? The spaces in between love and distance, between generosity and boundaries, between pride and peace. We're exploring what it means to lead, to love, and to keep our composure in a world that keeps testing our capacity. So let's get into it. Now, I want to let everybody know that's watching this live and in real time, right, that we are actually streaming live and across multiple platforms, right? So you may be one of the only individuals in that particular area, but if you are watching it on either YouTube or on Facebook, you have the ability to comment. And if you comment, I can see it and I can pull it right up here on screen, right? Now, if you're watching through either Instagram or TikTok, I can still see it. I can interact with you, but I can't pull it up on the screen. So, let's make this as interactive as possible because we got quite a bit to cover, right? There's been a lot going on. And even though it is not my goal to cover it all, right? Because I mean, like literally, it's been a bit of a shit show, right? Even though we're not going to be able to get into it all, this is going to be a unique show that is centered around a lot about love, a lot about Black love, and even specifically with a highlight on men, right? I kind of want to dig into men. I noticed that there was a theme that was evolving this week. And so that's going to be a lot of what we address tonight. So I came across this post, and this is where we're going to start. Okay, so let me go ahead and just cue this up first, because when I saw this, I was like, okay, yeah, this is actually some interesting stuff right here. So this segment we are going to call, hold on, there we go, I love you, but I can't right now. Okay. So I came across this post and it stopped me in my tracks. Right now, it's about two people who have love for each other, but one of them admits that they just don't have the emotional capacity to keep the friendship going right now. No drama, no blame, just honesty. Right. And so we'll talk a lot about relationships ending badly, but what about when they end peacefully? Right. So let's talk about emotional capacity, boundaries, and what it looks like to love somebody enough to walk away. Now, this particular post, let's go ahead and jump right into it so that you can see it. It says, a woman ended our friendship because she felt I wasn't devoting enough attention to nurturing it. She said she realized she needed more from her friendships. I expressed that I was going through a pretty emotional, draining divorce, and unfortunately, I didn't have the capacity to give more than I was giving. I was barely keeping my head above water for me and my children. I didn't make her feel bad, and she didn't make me feel bad. We wished each other well and parted ways. It was honest and mature. So, I'm kind of curious, and if you're, watching it, feel free to kind of dive in and let me know what you think about it. I was kind of surprised when I saw a lot of the feedback on this particular post, because it was surprisingly rather mature. A lot of people, I think, commended her on her emotional maturity, and there were several people that also kind of felt like, you know what, I've been in a space before like that, right? Where for whatever reason, the friendship just wasn't given what, I desired. And so there are times, where you have to kind of part ways. And that's one of the things that I think we seldom talk about, like in our interpersonal relationships, right? Like there's always this belief that, breakups are only romantic breakups. But sometimes some of the most painful breakups are the breakups that happen between friends. Now, I'm always fascinated when people physically end the friendship, right? Like to me, okay. So let's unpack this a bit. So there are times, in romantic relationships where it can get a little sticky and people have a tendency to ghost, right? And many people have always felt that like ghosting is a very emotionally immature thing to do, right? Like, you at least owed the person the decency to let them know, how you felt. And, even if it wasn't any kind of reconciliation, you don't owe them any type of retribution or, a second chance, but you at least owe them the decency, the common courtesy, the respect to let them know that you are going to be pivoting and like, going away from your relationship. And so I can understand that from a romantic space. I'm always fascinated when people do that from a friendship space, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that you be bogus, but there are times where it's like, okay, you and that particular friend may just be like in a rough patch. Um, and it may not even be because of something that someone did, maybe just like your schedules are kind of conflicting, or maybe you do feel that they aren't maybe showing up the way that they could. Now, I think that there's multiple ways that a person could address that, right? I think that you could address it head on, you could speak on it. But I've normally found that in moments like that, a person will just kind of pull back a little bit, right? If you kind of feel like a friendship is not giving you what you desire. As adults, sometimes we just kind of pull back and we give it space. And I think that that is typically, and I could be wrong, but I think that that's typically how people as adults kind of navigate that terrain. What fascinated me about that post was the fact that the woman physically called her friend to make her aware of the fact that, she felt emotionally unfulfilled and that she ended the friendship, and it kind of even got me to thinking like, how would I handle that, right? Like as emotionally mature as I like to believe I am, I don't think that I've ever had a friend call me to end it. You know what I'm saying? But it is funny though, because even as I'm pontificating about this now though, there was a point, and I can think back to this, and I'm not even gonna call out her name, you know what I mean? Because Lord forbid she watches this, because she'll dig into me now. But I do recall a good friend of mine one time reaching out, and she wasn't reaching out to me to end it, but she was reaching out to me to kind of air her grievance, which that to me is fair, because I think that she felt that she was putting in all the effort, that in most cases, if she wasn't reaching out, then we weren't talking, in which case I heard that, and I obviously, wanted to reassure her that not only was she heard, but that, I understood where it was that she was coming from. But I do recall a bit of friction in that moment. And it was just largely because, similar to this situation that I just read a moment ago, I was going through a bit of a transition, and there was so much that was happening in my world that I think she was not aware of, And so I always find that kind of fascinating when someone kind of hits you up, and before they really get an opportunity to assess where your emotional space at, it's like, well, let me just tell you how it is that I feel, right? Because I think that she was being assumptive that I was either ignoring her, or that I was making time for everyone else, but I wasn't making time for her. You know what I mean? And I can't remember all the specifics in that particular relationship, but I mean, in that particular situation, but I do recall, us kind of exchanging, having a bit of a contentious exchange. And, I think from my perspective, it was it felt a little weird that I was being burdened in that way, that she kind of felt like, because I was not making her feel good, or because, I wasn't making the time for her, that, there was something wrong. It felt a little selfish to me in the moment. And I think largely because of the fact that I was aware of the fact that she had not emotionally tapped in to really even see where I was at, to see if there was a reason for the, what I think she perceived as a pullback. But instead, just like, I'm gonna hit you up and let how I feel about, this. And to be honest, this was in my maybe mid to late 20s. And so, I probably still had a bit of emotional maturing to do in that regard. And so, if I'm being very honest, it did feel weird. It felt weird to have a woman friend who I was not intimate or romantic with, kind of come at me for not being available. I think in my mind, I did not really see responsibility or obligations attached to platonic friendships, right? Like, when we catch up, we catch up. When we don't, we don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't really see it as I had a responsibility or obligation, because to me that always felt weird. Like, damn, so like now do I have to kind of put myself on a schedule? I got to call you once a week in order to check in. You know what I mean? Like, the phone works both ways. That was kind of my mentality. I was coming from that perspective. Like, well, the phone works both ways. Like, you pull back, and sometimes life be life. And it was one thing when I lived in the same city as you. I'm living in a different city. There's a lot of things that's going on. My grind was super hard. And like I said, now at my tender age of 46, I can be very much aware of the fact that she was being fair in expressing her grievance. I think for me, it just felt a little weird, because the only time that I was used to being held accountable from a friendship perspective was inside of a romantic space. It felt like romantic relationships are the only ones that kind of deserved that kind of, like, back and forth or whatever, where I have to answer to you why I wasn't available. You know what I mean? So, I was kind of like, girl, we ain't fucking, like, that was kind of my mentality, right? Like, I don't know how you feel about that. You know what I'm saying? But looking back in hindsight, I really do got to give her credit for making me aware of it. And even just when I think about it now, like, in hindsight, I really did not handle it in at a very high EQ level. And so I think as a result of that, we probably did have a nice little period. It was probably several months, if not a year, where we just kind of fell away because my thing was this, like, listen, I might not hit you up all the time, but when you call me, and we make time for one another. Girl, we on that phone for 3, 4, 5 hours, and I'm tapping in, and it's like we never left. You know what I'm saying? And so, from my perspective, it was always like, listen, when we do talk, the energy is great. You know what I'm saying? So we know we still here. I just didn't understand what felt like the expectation. I felt like she was placing expectations on me that felt a little, weird for me. Just because I hadn't had, I guess, friendships. Guys don't do that typically. Like that is very much a woman thing to do, I probably would say. And not saying that guys should not do it, but just saying that typically guys don't do it, right? And so I think that was kind of the flippant nature that I had. Like, girl, it ain't like we smashing or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I was probably a little dismissive of it. And when I think back, I'm really glad that our friendship was able to sustain that, and that she was able to kind of, I guess, work through my ignorance in that regard. It's funny looking back at it now, because until this exact moment, I think I probably subconsciously still felt valid, right? But yeah, but hopping into this particular situation, while the woman did feel like, yeah, man, we were being, mature, and yeah, sometimes relationships, was peaceful. I tapped into that particular post because I don't know if I see that as being the same. And largely because in that particular situation, as the woman shared, she was going through something heavy, right? So, I guess the question that I have in that regard is like, like, what is the cost, of the relationships, like the emotional burden, right? Like, I understand that sometimes growth requires distance, and not resentment. So I do respect the fact that they were able to speak on it, but I feel some kind of way about knowing that, like, while you were going through something, especially if she knew it. If you know your friend is going through some emotional turmoil, because typically divorces are kind of public, right? You are aware of the fact that someone that was a major part of your life is no longer there. And if you are aware that someone is going through something and you're still only thinking about yourself, like, I don't know how I feel about that. And maybe that's just the way I am. I tend to approach my relationships rather selflessly. You know what I mean? Where I'm normally thinking about the other person first because I'm a giver, and so it- if I was in a space where I was going through something and someone could not see that, or didn't care about it, but all they cared about was their emotional well-being, or whether or not they were getting from me what they needed, I wouldn't fight to keep you, but I wouldn't consider that a mature thing. I wouldn't look at it like, well, no, yeah, sometimes things. I'd be looking at it like, you know what? Not only do I agree with you, but yeah, this is definitely for the best, right? And sometimes God, you know, looks out for people. What they say, sometimes separation is like God's protection. Sometimes rejection is God's protection. That's the way I probably would have seen that situation. But, again, maybe I'm wrong in that. So Casey says, glad it was amicable, but that's a shitty friend. Exactly. That's how I feel, right? She's going through some real stuff, and you're complaining that she isn't giving more. Girl, bye. Exactly. That's how I feel, And so, Jennifer says that, this is on point. I'm in similar situations. Oh wow. Yeah, listen, I get it. And that is how I think that that is the space that we find ourselves in at times. But yeah, I mean, when I looked at that, I was just like, yeah, no, I don't know if I agree with her assessment, of it. But I guess a question is emotional capacity something that we can rebuild, or is it a sign that the relationship has run its course, right? So in that mode, I mean, yeah, I guess you could rebuild it, but for me, the only way that I would probably be able to rebuild it would have been if that person atoned for what I felt like was an unfair reason for them to remove themselves from my world. You know what I mean? Like you would have to be held accountable for that. You know what I'm saying? Like it couldn't just be one of those you just kind of pop up out of the blue and start talking and then we just act like we Gucci again. Because people like to do that sometimes. People like to go away from you, leave for bogus reasons or, say stuff like, and it was funny because in the comments of that was wild because some people was like, it was this one woman that said that there was a friend that she had that she was like really close with for a period of time. And then her friend had started going to a new church, got really into church. And then just out of the blue one day said, you know what, God told me that we need to part ways and no longer be friends. And that really damaged the woman that heard that. And she was like, she said it seemingly came out of the blue and she didn't really know how to receive it, but she accepted it. And she said just recently the girl, text her just casually, wanting to check in and the whole nine. And so she was asking, like, how do y'all think I should handle this? Oh, those comments was lighting her ass up like, oh, you need to let her know. So God told you to hit me back now. Like, I mean, people wasn't feeling that, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of in that same space. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what people do. People will circle that block when they need you or circle that block when all of a sudden the life that they thought they was going to have without you ain't given no more. You know what I mean? And, anybody that knows me or that's close with me knows that I have two pet peeves. One is to be misunderstood and the other one is to be taken for granted, right? If you take me for granted, it's like, listen, I get it. But one thing we not going to do is for me to prostitute myself just so that I can have your presence. Nobody's presence is that important to me where I'm going to be taken for granted in order to be around you, right? Like I live my life by that Bible scripture that says to never cast your pearls amongst the swine. And that to me, I interpret that as to never give something of value to someone or something that cannot appreciate it. And if I value myself and I understand the value of my friendship, if you don't want to be a part of this, if you don't want to be a part of my world, listen, that is one thing we are not going to do, right? Is me putting myself out there and, hey, what and me walking on eggshells or hopping through hoops. Nah, if what you want is to not be here, I understand. And, next man up. That's the way I'm moving. Maybe I'm bogus in that regard, but it's real. So next segment, we're going to talk about the lost language of male friendships. Okay. So, staying inside the theme of friendships, this next clip really hit me. It's two brothers having a deep conversation about something we don't hear often, right? Men talking about friendship, vulnerability, and the wounds that make it hard to connect. They talk about their father issues, emotional barriers, and how healing starts when a man learns to speak a new language, not of power, but of presence. So what I want to do is have you guys key into this one, and then, we'll come back and we'll dive in.
And study shows this: men have a difficult time making friends after 35. Mm-hmm. And this is the real reason why a lot of men are suffering in silence and suffering in their mental health because of the lack of community and the lack of friendships. They're not like women. They don't engage, and most men don't build friendships beyond their workplace. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And our friendship started from a challenge of who can lose the most weight and get down to the lowest body fat. Right. And that built the friendship that people see that we have today, and the love that I have for this brother. And I saw it in him. Like I said, bro, you're one of the best to me. Mm-hmm. And I think when you are building friendships, you want to have friendships where somebody can see more in you than you see in yourself in that current space.
Yeah. Why were you so guarded, Dr. Tubman?
Yeah, please tell these folks. Matter of fact, tell the world how he would leave me on red, and it didn't bother me because, and I want to add this, when you have dealt with your rejection or abandonment issues, how a person responds doesn't trigger you. Yeah. Because I didn't know what his experience was, but I knew I wanted to keep showing up for him. Mm-hmm.
Friendship is important to me. It's very essential, and I'm too old to start over in certain places. So for me, I had fresh wounds as it pertains to male-to-male friendships, brothers, real strong relationships. And I had just gotten to the point to where I was okay without the relationship. And so when this good brother reached out to me, he was very persistent. I didn't understand him. I didn't understand his process, his makeup. He's a therapist. So his mental is really, really strong. Mine's strong, but it's more defensive versus, just being vulnerable. So I had a difficult time trying to be vulnerable. I had what's called toxic masculinity, very toxic. And
Break that down, because somebody gonna hear that and they gonna create their own definition of toxic.
I love the honesty, though. I love that.
But you know what, JT, I don't think it was really toxic. I just think it was guarded because we both had father wounds.
yeah,
And when you've had father wounds, it's hard to build male-to-male friendships, because when you have not been fathered well, you're very guarded and you're very defensive, because there's a part of you that have not had a very safe relationship with another man.
yeah.
So for another man, and I buy flowers, and I'm all the things, but then the duality of that, I'm a lion and a lamb.
Yeah.
And so he got to see that, but I understood it, and it wasn't that I needed a friend. I just there's just some people that you just felt drawn to.
Yep.
And I think that's beautiful. That's a great way to put it. Lion and lamb. I was all lion, no lamb in sight. So to actually start experiencing other men that were so transparent that they could show you the lamb, that took time for me to adjust. So I wasn't going to express how I felt. Bishop Jakes broke me from that. He kept saying, "How do you feel?" And I would send a strong arm emoji, or I would send fire, And he says, "I'm tired of that. Explain to me what you feel." But I didn't have the language.
Yeah.
I didn't have the language to explain it. That's a part of that toxicity as well. Because if you can't explain it, you throw signs.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it took me going through all of the therapy, why I rejected my father, why my father wasn't there, the terrible relationships with my parents, the terrible relationships with my brothers and sisters, all of the things that were wrong with me. I started paying attention to the tension, because the tension was causing me to break. So if you don't pay attention to the tension, you will pay for the tension.
Listen, that's powerful. That's powerful. So, first and foremost, one of the things that I really appreciated about that clip was just their willingness and their ability to be able to speak in a way that I feel men often don't give ourselves the latitude to do. Right. And, there's probably a myriad of reasons for this. This was actually a clip that I was going to hold for, one of the future shows that I do where, I have one of my partners because this, and maybe I will kind of resurge the clip at another point. It'll have a resurgence, but I think that it is still something, keeping inside the same vein of friendship, and the importance of it. I really feel that is kind of like the key to life in many ways, is relationships. So much about our world hinges on the kinds of relationships that we have. I think that you could really trace a lot of things that is occurring in this world back to relationships, and our ability or inability to be able to manage them effectively, right? And as a result of that, I did appreciate just kind of hearing them speak about that in an open way, right? Without having to say pause a bunch of times. That's one of the things that, and I've said this many times before, it is one of the most annoying trends that has ever been invented. It was it came in the very early stage. It might have been a little funny, and now it is just outrageous, and for the most part, I think as a culture, we have kind of moved away from it, but there's a couple of old heads that cannot seem to let it go, right? Dame Dash, if you hear Dame Dash talk, his mind is constantly thinking about male gay shit. Straight up. He will say something and be like, pause. And my mind didn't even go towards homosexual sexual moments until he said that. Like, I had to think, wait a minute, what did that have to do with gay sex? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm thinking, man, you are one of the most creative pause people on the planet, right? Like, it's one thing if it's something that's just so outrageous where it's kind of like that's what she said, right? Like, I get that kind of comedy where it's like, okay, bro, you lob that up there. I had to slam dunk that. But when you are literally like that man is like a pause savant, okay, because it will be something that's damn near metaphoric, and he'll just be like, pause, and you'll be like, pause, and I have to stop and think about it. I'm like, okay, all right, and it's like it started as a joke, but if you have to use that as a crutch in order to get through thought, that to me is problematic, right? And largely because of what that says. You know what I'm saying? Like that any expression of emotion or anything that gives the mild inclination of affection has to be, disclaimed. Like, let me add disclaimer, I'm not gay. Bro, come on, man. You are literally in your 50s and you're saying pause like 5 times inside of like a 10-minute clip. What are we doing? Right. And the reason I don't like that is because it reinforces our inability sometimes to be able to share emotion and affection towards one another. Right. Like our inability to be able to hug one another, to be able to say, man, I love you. Right. Like, just straight up, not a pause, not a, hey, bro, I got love for you. No, bro, I love you. I love you. What is wrong with saying that, man? Like, so many of us have father issues that we just have not addressed. And so as a result of having these, you know, father issues that have not been addressed, it adversely affects our ability to be able to forge meaningful relationships, and so what was unique about that, and like I say, it was just like, nothing about either of those dudes looked feminine. You know what I mean? Like, neither of them was somebody that you just wanted to go up to and try and call them some type of name and be disrespectful, because they probably gonna put hands on you. You know what I mean? But like, to be able to watch them admit that post 35, man, there was something about this dude that I just liked. And that to me was such a dope thing to be able to admit, right? Because sometimes we do not give ourselves the ability to do that. I think sometimes even women feel a little weird doing that, right? Because it's not even just about the gay aspect or anything like that. It's about the vulnerability, the fear of rejection, the fear of, I put myself out there because there's something about you that you look fun. You look like somebody I like to hang around. And, maybe they have already reached their friend quota. They've already reached their friend limit, and they don't have space for you, right? And it's like, okay, how are you going to deal with that? How do you address that? You know what I'm saying? How do you deal with that sense of rejection, and not from someone that you have romantic interest in, but someone that you just platonically wanted to kick it with? You know what I mean? Like, I know that could sting, and so as a result, many of us don't approach these moments or these situations. And as a result, it's like, man, how much value are we leaving on the table? Because there are times, man, where you will be around someone and you're just like, man, this dude constantly keeps me laughing. You know what I mean? Like this dude, right? Hey, man, he a cool brother. I like him. And sometimes if you're working with someone, then you kind of have that ability to be around them for an extended period of time. And then it could turn into, hey, man, you want to go, grab a drink? Man, hey, man, what you got going on this weekend? Like, as men, we sometimes can kind of fish our way around it or whatever. Hey, man, where you going to go to watch the game? Like, we have our little ways of how we can approach it, so that it doesn't feel a little too weird. Oh, man, you know what I should have done? There's this clip of this comedian, and he had just a phenomenal set where he was basically talking about how it was this real cool, like, smooth dude, kind of tall, dressed nice, had money, that invited him out to like a game. And he was just like, oh shit, yeah, come on, let's do it. And as he's walking through this thing, you realize halfway through that this dude actually taking him out on a date, and he just didn't realize it, you know. So it was the most hilarious joke that didn't cross the line of being homophobic, but towards the back end, he realized, oh shit, this dude is like not only is he hollering at me, I went on the date, you know. And so the way that he kind of ended it was like still enjoying them tickets and them nice courtside seats. It still wanting to engage, you know. So it was a funny joke, like, and I get it as men, like we're always trying to, I guess, guard ourselves against that, you know. Like there's this fear of, which really is an irrational fear, because like what are we imagining in our head? Like even if the dude was flirting, you know what I'm saying, like the moment that they cross that line, no, you put his ass back in that compartment, you know what I'm saying. Like what are we imagining? Are we imagining that it's going to turn into like a prison rape scene? I think so much about our identities are based off of very irrational things that don't really exist naturally in our day-to-day lives, you know. Kind of like when we were growing up as kids, cartoons made you believe you had to be on the constant lookout for quicksand and falling anvils, you know what I mean. And I've never seen quicksand in my adult life where I'm just like, you know, they didn't warn you about the real shit, but quicksand and falling anvils was the two irrational things that cartoons kept going back to. And for whatever reason, man, male affection makes us feel like it's gonna go clean off into an old episode of Oz, where we just gonna be powerless, you know. And I don't even know what that is. I don't know if that is like a fear of feeling emotions, you know, and not knowing what to do with them. Like do we have a fear that something might feel good, and then now I gotta question my identity and question my sexuality in a way that I didn't before? Because see, to me, if you're secure in who you are, why do I care about how this thing looks? Why do I care about how you feel about me? You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm grounded and I know who I am, my identity shouldn't feel so fragile that I can't express that. That's how I feel. You know what I'm saying? If there's fear in the expression of it, then that's because there's some dark areas, some shadow work that you haven't done yet. And a person may be questioning themselves, right? Like maybe they, you know, and not to say that, you know, they're closeted, but I think that, you know, it's almost like crack cocaine, right? Like you don't even want to try it because you don't know if you'll get addicted to it or not, right? Like some people can be casual drug users, but for people that got addictive personalities, they know, no, I can't have no beer. I can't even have a beer because it will lead to a all out bender. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's that kind of fear. Like I don't want no affection because if I like it at all, I may be full blown rainbows, pom poms, and whatever, you know, homosexual, like, you know, caricaturization that you have in your mind. Like you're afraid that it's going to go clean off the deep end. And so it's almost like, let me just be closed off because I can't express nothing. And I understand also that like our emotions and sexuality is a spectrum. And so the same way that you can have some people that are very fluid, you do have some people that I think are not homophobic at all. They are just 100% hetero, right? Like, so there is that. And I do give space for that. You know, I never try to paint all people in one box, but I do think that we sometimes have issues, right? We have problems that as a result of us not being able to do this very natural thing that's very healing, that adds so much value to our worlds. Our inability to do that strips us of value. And so as a result, man, we are closed off, we have blockages, and that shit turns into things, right? It turns into anxiety, it turns into stress, it turns into anger, you know, because you don't have these healthy relationships that oftentimes operate as mechanisms to not only keep you balanced, to keep you happy, to add value, you know, sounding boards. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the reasons why we be telling people they need therapy so much, right? And not that just because you therapy is a good thing regardless. But I think sometimes therapy for a lot of people is just that bridge, man. Go to somebody to talk and to express some emotions that you are having, because this whole stoic belief that strength is me being completely closed off, and man, I'm telling you, it's creating ulcers. It's, and people feel lonely, right? And loneliness is one of them things, man, that it's like it creeps up and you don't even realize that it's there. You know what I'm saying? You don't realize it's there. And when it occurs, you know what I'm saying, it's almost like, well, how do you don't even know what to do with that. You don't know what to do with that energy, and so I do believe that there are times where having that ability to be able to forge those relationships, to be able to have that friendship, man, it adds tremendous value. And so, like I said, I do appreciate, what the brothers was sharing, and I know post 35, man, and this is for men and women, it's hard. It's hard finding friends in this world, despite how interconnected we are, despite all these various means of us connecting to one another. I think for many people, this is one of the most isolating and lonely times that they've ever been in. It's like this technology gives the illusion of connection, when in reality it's a device that tends to isolate us more than anything else. And that's a whole other topic, because when you really start digging into the algorithm and how the algorithm works and what makes it successful, you know what I'm saying, it generally is because of its capacity or its ability to be able to hone in and like section you off, you know what I'm saying, and isolate and polarize. Like, that is what makes clips go viral. It doesn't go viral because everybody agrees with it. It doesn't go viral because there's a nice exchange of views. It goes viral typically because this particular clip snatches people to one of two edges, so it polarizes people. It's right, left, it's up, down, it's black or white. You know what I mean? Very seldom is there nuance, and in most cases, that's what a relationship is. A relationship is nuance, because in order to have them, you have to be able to sometimes accommodate someone. You have to be able to acquiesce to someone at times, and not necessarily losing yourself or losing your identity. But I do think that we have gotten to this space sometimes where it's like we've become so rigid. And so it affects not just our romantic relationships, but it affects our interpersonal. It affects our platonic relationships. And I honestly believe that for people that are having a hard time finding romantic partners, I've always felt like friendship kind of is the key. So many people do not know how to be friends with their significant other, right? It's like they're always an object. And this happens on both ends, ironically enough. It's probably more men doing it to women, but women are doing it to men also, right? If you only see that man as a means of getting something done, or a paycheck, or a meal, or a whatever, or even just his presence, if you don't actually vibe with this person, you don't have the capacity to be friends with them, then these relationships become one dimensional. So I think we have a tendency to objectify one another, and it's because the way that our romantic worlds have grown have always gotten us to a space where we don't really learn to like one another, right? It's like the guy is attracted to you because of physical, sexual reasons, and you are most likely attracted to him for security, stability reasons, right? And it's like, as long as we fulfill these things, everything else you feel like is just going to work itself out. And not necessarily, right? Like, that friendship takes work, it takes effort, and a lot of people aren't willing or able to, you know, put forth that effort. So yeah, that's just my thought. So now, let me see. This next segment, we are going to talk about when hospitality meets boundaries. Okay. So I want to lighten this up a little bit. And this post had me cracking up, but it's also one of those stories that says a lot more about human nature. Okay. So a guy meal prepped his food for a week, and a woman he was seeing came over and ate not one, but two of his prep meals. Said he never talked to her again. Okay. Now, was she wrong for eating them? Or was he wrong for saying help yourself and not expecting her to take that literally? Okay, so what we're going to talk about is when kindness crosses into boundaries and why people always assume help yourself comes with an asterisk. Okay, so I want to begin by actually just showing you the post because it literally had me cracking up. So this gentleman goes, this woman came over after a dinner date. We had a great conversation. We laughed, played music, we vibe. Then she asked me if she can eat one of my meal preps, chicken and rice, beans and salsa. And I said, sure. She proceeded to eat 2 meal preps, half a family bag of Sanitas chips, and 2 guacamole cups. My goodness. I never spoke to her again after that night or meal prepped ever again. Damn. This was 2019, and I still occasionally get irritated visualizing her putting the second meal prep in the microwave. Okay, now let's be clear. That is classic. That is classic, right? Now, I mean, can we just be honest? Shorty was greedy. Out now. Help yourself don't mean help yourself to the whole damn house, right? That's trifling. I don't care what nobody say. That's trifling as hell, man. That reminds me of one of my cousins, man. My cousin is one of them types, man, that'll come over and ask you if he can, man, you mind if I grab a drink? I'm talking about somebody. Like, yeah, man, go help yourself. And you're thinking, like, yeah, we sipping. Yeah, you're gonna maybe get a drink or two. Hell, I don't mind you do 3. You look up, that whole bottle gone. It's like, first off, where are you putting this alcohol? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is dangerous, right? But the fact that I know that inviting you over means you are going to systematically work your way through my liquor cabinet, and you also never pull up with a bottle. And as a dude, you don't even care, but you also be like, come on, dog. Like, that's so tacky, man. That's so tacky. You know what I mean? And it get to the point now where, me, I'm the type where if I know what's coming, I just gotta have you. Hey, man, you might want to grab something on your way over, man, because I'm kind of light. Hey, man, you might want to grab what you feel like drinking. I only have this. And the thing that I have is typically not what he likes, okay? But if you got some vodka, oh man, he gonna make that vodka look like Gatorade, right? It's like, bro, man, what are you doing, man? Like, come on, man. So I am curious to know, like, just like, how would you handle a situation like that? I mean, do you think my man's was bogus? Like, was this something that, he probably should have, said? Like, because like I said, like, when someone says help yourself, like, do they mean all the way? Like, straight up, but I think it's hilarious, though, the fact that my man said that from that point forward, he still has not meal prepped. So, like, not only did she just put a bad taste in his mouth, but he just lost all motivation from that point forward, which is deep. That means that was a very traumatic and triggering situation for my man's. If he pulled up and was just like, you know what, man, the hell we're working out. You know what I'm saying? From this point forward, matter of fact, I ain't eating healthy at all. Like, yo, man, that is absolutely bogus, but yeah, I mean, to me, I do think that I think she was being a little trifling. You know what I'm saying? I think she was being a little trifling. On a personal level, though, I would not have cared, and he did go on to admit inside the thread, because it was funny, because people were laughing, but a few people did challenge him because apparently it hurt their feelings. So how the phrase "hit dogs holler." Oh no, all the 2 meal prep eating guests that were in his comments had something to say. And he did say, oh no, he said, in all honesty, he said, what made me think about this was that the woman that I'm with now, that I'm in a relationship now, if she did that, I wouldn't even think twice about it. I wouldn't care. So the fact that I cared on a level was an indication that I really wasn't that into her, And so I thought that was kind of a profound assessment that he made as it relates to the visceral response that he had to that woman pulling out a second meal prep. And keep in mind, y'all, this ain't just like she came over and she had dinner. They came from dinner, right? So how you gonna come from dinner and then eat 2 meal preps? Not even like some snacks. I can even see you max that bag of chips. I'm like, damn, girl, I wouldn't even care. But 2 meal preps? Like, nigga, that is a quarter of the week right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, but nonetheless, though, like I said, admittedly, I probably am like, damn, but if I'm in courting phase and I was feeling you, I know me, I wouldn't have gave a shit. Yeah, I'd have been drinking like, yeah, eat up. Don't eat too much. Because I ain't shit. So, I mean, I personally probably wouldn't have cared, but his assessment on the back end, though, does make sense because when the little things annoy you, right? When the little things irk you, that normally to me is an indication that y'all probably just not vibing. You know what I mean? And so I get it. I get it. Maybe you were, and I think it's the same way with women, to be very clear, right? The dude asked you out and he was like, all right. Now, sometimes you might have thought the dude was just like decent. You might not have been really attracted to him, but you was like, I ain't doing nothing. And then you hang out with the dude, and turns out he's got a great personality. He's got swag. He's funny. And now you're kind of into him. You know what I'm saying? And so now what grew as just like mild, meh, or like faint interest can actually start a fire a little bit. I've heard of situations like this. Any two people that are hanging around when they realize that they have chemistry. And then that's, I think, when you become a little bit more willing to be generous in that regard. But yeah, man, when it's somebody that you not feeling, I don't even care if y'all been intimate, man. When you're not feeling them, you become very short. You know what I mean? And the simplest of things can piss you off. It's just like when a person is attracted to somebody, man, all of a sudden his game, he can be a little corny. The corniness becomes cute then. You know what I'm saying? You can think corny is cute if you feeling a dude. But if you ain't feeling him and he say some corny shit, yeah, okay. Check, please. So I get it, but I still thought that was funny. So this next segment is interesting. I actually just saw this today, right? And I hate to be the podcast that's playing clips from other podcasts. It's like a vicious cycle, kind of like when you hold one mirror up to the next and it just repeats itself back into infinity. That's kind of almost what this probably is a little bit. But I did think that this was interesting, right? So we'll call this Black Girl Magic, Black Man Missing. Right. So this next clip sparked a really interesting conversation online, especially in our community. So the speaker, Bakari Sellers, he said, in this era of Black girl magic, is there still space for Black men to breathe and lead? Now, this isn't about competition. It's about coexistence, because while we celebrate the incredible rise of Black women, as we should, some Black men are quietly wondering if there's still room for their voice, their role, and their story. So I want you to take a listen, and we'll dig in after that.
In the spaces that I'm in, is in this era of Black girl magic, is there space for Black men to breathe and lead? And there is this theory that is pervasive. During this period where we've seen this attention, and most of it is earned attention, on Black women, their success, their educational achievement, entrepreneurial success, etc., Black men are trying to figure out their place in our communities. What once was a place of leading your household and leading your communities and being able to be that voice and be able to speak out, there are many people wondering if that role is still there or if their voice has to shrink during this era of uplift. Now, I know the quick response that people will say is, oh, well, they can coexist. Like there's nobody pushing you out.
That's how I feel.
And I think that the response would be that sometimes it's so loud as we praise, as we should, that many times we feel as if our accomplishments, our successes, or even more importantly, our trials and tribulations go unnoticed. And that pushes us further in the back of our homes and further in the back of our communities. And I think that's reflective of some of the things you see.
Okay. So, obviously, when you see something like this, there's several questions that kind of come into play, right? In this era of Black girl magic, is there space for Black men to lead and breathe? Are Black men truly being sidelined, right? Or are they just learning to share the spotlight? And so there's a lot of thoughts that I had when I saw that, and even just kind of watching the commentary, which was heavily women that were speaking. they were kind of pushing back, and they said, listen, I know this sounds familiar. There was one woman in particular. She said, I know this sounds familiar, but sometimes equality feels like oppression, right? And that's oftentimes something that we say when we're talking about how a lot of white people that are viscerally pushing back from wokeness, and things of that nature, they feel like, yeah, right now this is a anti-white person movement. You guys want me to feel, or the DEI conversation, right? It's like people are so used to this imbalanced system that the moment that anything attempts to come in and make it more equitable, people that are normally on the receiving end of whatever oppressive state that currently exists have a hard time getting comfortable with just even a slight balancing, right? Because we're not going to act like just because Black women have moved more into the forefront that now the system is just balanced, right? Because the statistics and the numbers still show you that, on average, women are earning less for positions where their roles are identical, right? And so, I question whether or not I felt like that this was fair, but then the question comes in, is like, can we coexist without competition, right? And you know while I did see a wide array of different feelings, and even a couple of men that kind of felt like, see, a lot of women are showing that you all aren't really hearing what it is that he said. I think sometimes men felt like they weren't being heard in that regard. And this is one of those moments that, again, I would potentially be benefited by hearing from someone who feels that what he said, had some validity. I personally didn't think it was invalid. I just think I see it a little different, right? First and foremost, I'll start with this. And this is no shade to Black men, because I love my bros. You know what I'm saying? Like, real talk. Like, I love my Black brothers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got great relationships with a lot of men in my world. And so I ain't one of them type of, cats that's just like, I always lean in, to women's viewpoint, so to speak. But if we gonna keep it a buck, just to keep it purely 100, if you are a leader and you have to ask to lead, are you really a leader? Right? Like, if you have to ask to lead, is that leadership? And that, to me, is where I'm like, I don't know if I understand what the ask is in this moment. Like, it's one thing to feel an emotion. That's valid, to feel an emotion, but it's not up to the other person or the other party always to make you feel better about it, right? It's not always up to the other party to completely acquiesce to whatever it is that you're feeling. Now, it's okay to feel heard, to desire to be seen, and to desire to be heard. I think that that's a very real and fair desire for everyone to have. But once I hear you, are you really ready for my response, right? Are you really ready to receive what it is that I tell you once I've heard you? Because if I don't really agree with the point that you're making, this might feel like I'm challenging you, or this is confrontation, when in reality it's just me giving you some real shit. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, like, when I hear that, I don't know what the expectation is of women. Like, do you want them to stop striving? Do you want them to stop being ambitious? Do you want them to stop making the sacrifices that they've been making, right? To go back to school, to grind it out. Like, many of these women that were leveling up were doing this while still being the primary care provider of their child. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even like they just was living high off the government, as people always want to paint this picture. And as the man, we were the ones that was straddled at the crib with the babies, so we weren't able to chase our dreams. It's like, nah, man, we had the same 24 hours that they had. They dealing with the same oppression that we dealing with, but oftentimes more, right? Because they a woman and they're Black. So it's like, to me, it's always unfair to look at this situation like, man, is there a space for me to lead? I don't know, nigga. Is it? Are you going to make some space? Because to me, that's what leaders do. Leaders ain't going around looking for people to give them permission, right? Like, they step forward and they make their voices known. They make their presence felt, right? And to me, leadership doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else around them has to be subservient. See, I think a lot of times as men, if we're being honest, what we have to take ownership of is that we have a misguided perception of what leadership actually is. We think that leadership is domination, right? We think that leadership is I'm just going to run out in front and I want everybody to just listen to whatever it is I say, regardless of how harebrained it actually may be. That's not leadership, right? That's more like dictatorship. That's more you being a demagogue. That's not you being a leader. Because an actual leader, if we're going to keep it a buck, sometimes good leaders are also the best followers. I'm going to pause for that one. Sometimes good leaders are also the best followers. This is 48 laws of power, right? This is 48 laws of power. There are some times that in order to be a good leader, you have to first learn how to follow sometimes, right? Because following don't mean that you're not a leader. Sometimes leadership is support, right? Sometimes being a leader is understanding that, okay, hold on. If what you got right now is working, how do I support this? How do I support this so that we can build? How do you take your ego out of the equation for the good of whatever it is that you collectively are trying to accomplish? And that's the message sometimes, man, that I think we miss out on, right? Is that sometimes, man, you need to be supporting whatever the demonstration is. That's what leadership is. So if we look up, and right now, man, Black women are trailblazing and you are within earshot, don't sit on the sidelines, man, and feel sad. Like, I don't care if you're LeBron. If your shot ain't hitting this game, but that nigga that was on the bench, for whatever reason, he popping them like crazy, man, you better keep feeding him the ball. If he got the hot hand, feed him the ball. Are you trying to win or are you trying to be the hero, right? We on the 1 yard line. You going to go ahead and give this to Marshawn Lynch, or you going to try to be the hero and try to pass it on the 1 yard line and get an interception, right? Because see, that's not a leader right there. That's not a leader. A leader is going to go ahead and give it to the man that's who got y'all on this 1 yard line, right? Who they've already shown they can't stop right now. For whatever reason, they can't stop him. And we winning, and they can't stop him right now. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the ball so that we can get the touchdown. That's what a winner looks like, right? Not you wanting to be the one to pass it in. And that's where we fucking up. That's where we fucking up, man. We turning it into a competition, not them. You can still be the boss. She still wants your guidance, right? But you can't be the one that's trying to put her under your heel, trying to make her feel jealous or bad about the fact that you not on top right now. They ain't, man, I'm telling you, man, ain't nothing a Black woman love more than the support of a Black man. She wants you to be her rock, bro. And this ain't got nothing to do with how much money you making. This ain't got nothing to do with what your title is. You can still be her king, and she will bring that money home to y'all. And that's if she a real one. Now, if she bring it home and she's trying to belittle you after you've been legitimately helping her, cause that's what we got to go to. Cause see, people will challenge me on this and they'll make it seem like, yeah, but see, when they doing that, then they try to belittle me because I'm not doing. And it's like, okay, no. I feel you on that. I'm not sitting here trying to make it seem like, everybody is evolved and that all Black women in this role are able to handle the power that comes from that position sometimes, right? And so I do know that there are times where people can attempt to belittle you and can attempt to strip you of, your manhood because of the fact that you are not making more. And in those situations, bros, that wasn't the chick that you should have been with, right? She don't understand the value that you add. And so that's when you're supposed to remove yourself from that situation. But one thing I know is that if you actually are helping her to secure that bag, then it ain't her bag, it's y'all bag, right? Because you were helping her. And she's aware of that. She's aware if you are actually her emotional support, if you are invested in whatever that thing is that she's doing. Not she come home and she just feels alone. When she comes home, can she tell you about the bullshit that went down in the office? Are you going to help her navigate that space, right? Are you going to listen to her? Are you going to be her comforter? You know what I'm saying? Are you going to attempt to hold her down in the other areas? Because if you're not in a position where you are making the big bag and her money is affording you all a certain lifestyle, listen, you got to do some other shit, right? You have to pick up the slack. And I know that ain't the shit that people want to hear, right? You might have to wash some dishes every once in a while. You know what I'm saying? You might have to fold some clothes, my nigga. Like straight up. You're going to have to contribute to whatever it is that you all are building. But if she feel like I got to still pick up the kid, I got to do everything. And then I got to come home and I got to cook for you. And then you want to be treated like a man. And then I'm paying all the bit. Like that's when the weight breaks a person's back. And if we being honest, dog, you get it, man. You get it. You get it. You get it, man. You got to. You know what I'm saying? So we got to stop the bullshit arguments. You know what I'm saying? We really have to stop the arguments, man. And when it comes to leadership, what I'm getting at is that there are a lot of different versions and vantage points of leadership. It doesn't always look the same, man. It doesn't always look the same, right? I guarantee you, man, as dope of a person as Kamala Harris most likely is, I don't know her personally, so I gotta say most likely is, I'm pretty certain that in her household, she loves the shit out of her husband, Doug, and he adds tremendous value to her, and she probably confide to him with everything. His words probably mean more to her than anyone else's, right? Inside of their household. So who cares about how everybody else outside of what y'all are building feel about y'all? You know what I'm saying? Y'all know what y'all got. And if you really are holding it down, you know what I'm saying, then more than likely, if she a real one, she gonna hold you down. You know what I'm saying? And this has been my experience with Black women my entire life, regardless of whether I was making more or they were making more. When we hold one another down, we typically Gucci, right? So there's a post that's been making waves asking whether Black owned still matters in a marketplace obsessed with being universal. Some people say if you're building something great, it should reach everybody. Others say that mindset erases the culture that birthed the brilliance in the first place. It's an important question. And, you know, can something be for us and for everyone at the same time, right? So basically what we're going to talk about is where the culture meets capitalism. But I want to show you the clip, not the clip, but the post first, because I saw this and I was like, okay, you know what? I actually didn't get to go to it this year, but I was like, all right. So this brother posted, he said, Afrotech has it all wrong. Stop making apps for the Black experience. Create a solution that solves a universal problem. No one cares that it's Black owned. Just make it valuable. And so, you know, this was another one of those posts. I was like, all right, I get where you coming from. I get where you coming from. You know what I'm saying? And it sounds good, but I'm questioning, are you really eating though? Are you eating the way you think you eating? You know what I'm saying? And that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, is he eating? So, you know, y'all feel free to chime in and let me know how you all feel about it, you know, but we'll start with the first question. Like, does Black owned still matter? Or has the term lost its meaning in a universal marketplace? So I want y'all to think about that for a second. Like, does Black owned still matter? And man, I want to say yes. In my heart, I feel like if we can get it to matter, that may solve a lot of things. If we can get it to matter, that may solve a lot of things. To play devil's advocate for a moment, I think that it can be a hindrance if in your mind you equate Black owned with guaranteed patronage. And there's sometimes in our community where we have a tendency to do that, right? Like, we're a black business and we have a largely black customer base, right? And maybe we are one of the only providers of this thing conveniently for them. Let's say it's a restaurant in a black neighborhood and they got fire greens and fire yams and fire fried chicken. And that line be wrapped around the corner. And you go there and you enjoy yourself, but then you start realizing that, okay, it look like they're making some good money up in here, man. Why the service always so damn slow, man? Like why the menu sticky? You just start noticing little things where you like, man, we ain't digging as deep as we should. And there are times where I've witnessed that. And I think that is an unfortunate byproduct of two things. One, that we are so anti-Karen sometimes in our community that we don't hold our people accountable, right? We don't force our people. We're so accepting and we're so loving of a culture. We're so forgiving as a people that you can sometimes do us wrong and we still gonna give you love. And while that can be one of our greatest gifts, it is literally why we provide way more value to the world than typically the world provides to us. Because despite what people do to us, we still bring that in and we still give y'all culture, which is love. We give you the thing that, and I talked about this last show, we give you the thing for free that is priceless. That's the fucked up thing about our culture, right? Is that it's so valuable that it cannot really adequately be quantified. And so since we are the creators of it and we love so hard, we give it to the world for free. White people find out how to monetize it. We're typically shitty at monetizing it ourselves, right? Because it is the gift that we give freely to the world, right? Despite how the world treats us, despite how the darker you are, the worse you typically are treated in any region beyond the deepest parts of Africa, you know what I mean? But yet everybody benefits from this culture that we export. And I think because of that, like I said, we kind of extend that grace to our own people. And when black people are the primary customers of a particular business, you'll notice that, like, yeah, people be you know they not always on point the way they should. Okay. And I look, I don't even want to, I'll just say there are some cities that have large populations of black people, and I love it every time I go to these cities and sitting at these expensive restaurants that are probably black owned, but definitely 60, 70, 80% black people in the room. And you can tell, man, not only these some black people with some money, but man, it's black people serving me and they nice, but they slow. Hey, slow as hell, man. It's almost like being in Italy. You know what I mean? Where they got the siesta or something, and you just like, listen, we ain't rushing for lunch, okay? We're going to take 3 hours. It's like, man, where is the, man, I thought he said that he was bringing, the ketchup. You know what I mean? And you just be like, damn. And don't let something break in the bathroom. Man. It's going to be forever before they go up in there and fix that thing. You know what I mean? Because we just, we are the kings and queens of making it work. You know what I'm saying? Making $1 out of 15 cents. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know how to rig something, and y'all already know what we call it. But sometimes, man, your gift can also be your weakness, right? Because it's like you get to this space where, because people are forgiving, because they're not, holding you accountable, complaining, and not just complaining, but shifting their business elsewhere, right? Because that's what capitalism does. Capitalism, it at its pure form, makes you competitive, because if you are not the best, if people are not seeing value in the thing that you provide, they will go to a competitor. And so that forces you sometimes to have to dig deep, right? That's why most businesses are going to pay more attention, unfortunately, to the negative comments, because we know that gets way more traction than the positive comments, because we know we're competing. But if you're the only black restaurant, man, in like a couple mile radius, and you already got lines outside the door, man, and I'm not saying this is all the time, but a lot of time, man, we do not feel properly incentivized to give our best. You know what I'm saying? And so that is an area where I think we sometimes have to be a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? I do think that massive wealth typically comes from, branching outside of your community, or if your product, service, whatever goes pop, as we call it with music, right? Where it crosses over. When you cross over, and that's just largely because it gives you a much broader customer base. You know what I'm saying? But in reading this particular post, I didn't necessarily think it was fair. I did, like I said, I got his overall point, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't 100% agree with all the points that he was making, right? And just to like look at it, to say to stop making apps for the Black experience, because I feel like these were separate thoughts that was kind of like a part of the collective, but I do want to approach each one differently, right? Especially since he's pointing out Afro tech. So to say, firstly, stop making apps for the Black experience. Now, being someone that is pretty much involved in the Black experience with the Tequila Tales, I got to disagree with that, right? And not just for my own selfish reasons, but because being in the experiential place, I understand the value that that has for people, right? Like tell Black people that are in an area where they are not ensconced in Blackness to not care about Black experiences, right? Like the city that I'm in right now, on paper, we might be like between 5 to 7% of the population. I think it has grown, because we don't always do the census properly, and it's been a lot of growth, but I'd be surprised if we were over like still 11%. You know what I'm saying? So you get a lot of people that come down here and they just desire to be around Black people. They desire to be around Blackness. They are looking for that, like even in the dating space, right? I don't want to go on Tinder where, a lot of people are probably swiping left just because either they don't find Black women attractive, which I think that's a lie. I think a lot of them do, but just, they don't feel comfortable. You know what I'm saying? And so, they typically are going to stay inside of their community. And that's how it is with all people, to be clear. Most people are most attracted to people that look like them and that come from their culture and their community. White people per capita are dating more white people. Same way with Black people, same way with Mexican people. This is across the board, regardless of what social media may make you want to believe. We still, men and women, more times than not, prefer or lean in to people that look like us, right? So if you move into an area and you are in a geo-tagged and you are 7% of the population, you know what I'm saying? Like, are you really mixing and mingling with the people that you feel not only attracted to, but that you feel kind of understand you and get you? It's like, nah. So these people are searching for these experiences. And like we were just talking about earlier in this show, the importance of relationships oftentimes is immeasurable. It cannot properly be quantified. And so, we're talking about technology and trying to bridge that gap. Nah, you can't say to stop creating apps dealing with the Black experience, because whoever it was that created that, they most likely did not create it purely to get rich off of it. They probably created it because it was something that they desire to see, right? And those typically are the best types of businesses for people to engage in. You want to be engaged, if you can, when possible, in something that you're actually passionate about, in something that you actually want to spend your time doing. You know what I'm saying? Because in order to be successful at it, it's going to take a hefty investment. So why invest in something that has nothing to do with you? You know what I'm saying? So, or that you're not going to enjoy. So it's like, one, I do think that experiences are hella important, and they're going to continue to be more important, especially when this economy falls off the fucking cliff, which it is. Not to be nihilistic, but it is. We know it is. And when it does, experiences are going to be more important, right? You're going to want to be around community. You know what I'm saying? You're going to want sometimes the comfort of, one another. In tough times, man, we lean on one another, right? And we add one another value. So it may not be about necessarily going out to, super expensive places, because I don't think that that's the only way that you can find value in relationships. But I do think that like the experiences are going to continue to be, relevant. To say create a solution that solves a universal problem. you know, I get what it is that you're saying, but like, how many universal problems are there really? Right? Like, if we really peel that back, then essentially what you're saying is, yeah, don't start and, try to pay attention to a niche. You're saying, no, you should open up your business and be Walmart. If you can't be Walmart, then don't open up your business. Like, what's a universal problem? And how many people have seen success by solving universal problems? Most things are niche, right? It like medicine. If I need a medicine and I've got back pain or whatever, I'm gonna take something that's going to target the back. There ain't no pill that just make your whole body feel good. You know what I'm saying? Everything is about specialization, especially on the internet, right? That's how you find your community. So if I'm a nerd and I'm invested in the nerd culture, I'm not going to create a product that accommodates some other community that I know nothing about. Why am I trying to be successful in a community that I know nothing about? That sounds like a recipe for disaster, right? Because I don't even understand it. I haven't done the research. That to me is also arrogant as hell. That's arrogant as hell to believe I can solve everybody's problem. Not this thing that was bothering me, this little slither of life that, oh shit, ain't nobody done this. Ain't nobody noticing that this thing right here and ain't nobody solved that. Like, man, like I'm gonna go ahead and solve that. Right. It may not be a universal problem. And I get what it is that he's saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's trying to take it outside of just blackness. You know what I'm saying? I feel what it is he's saying, but it's kind of weird because, like, why did you go to Afrotech to be anti-black? That's weird as hell. The more I even think about that. Why would you go to Afrotech so that you can ultimately develop anti-black takes? Let me go to the place that's black as hell and be like, y'all, stop being black up in here. Stop being Afrotech. Just be tech. That don't make no damn sense the more I sit up here and think about that, right? So really the entire post is a little riri if we're going to be honest. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you do? Stop it. You went to Afrotech and every problem that you had was all the blackness that surrounded you. You know what I'm saying? No, Afrotech is popping because it's niche. So of course, everything that deals with this is going to deal with black people, right? So just like he's saying, no one cares that it's black owned. And nigga, why are you at Afrotech? What you want, Afrotech that's owned by Viacom? That don't make no damn sense. See, I'm talking about sometimes people just hop on the internet and they just say dumb shit, man. And it sounds smart because you think you think you eating, but you're not. You're not eating, man. This nigga was not eating, right? Just make it valuable. And see, sometimes it's valuable because it is niche, right? Sometimes it is valuable because it does handle that's very specific, precise need that you had. Sometimes I want to hear some house music, but sometimes it's a certain kind of house music that I like, right? I'm not trying to hear techno. You like, no, just make it house music. It's like, nah, bro, it's so many different, versions of house music. Sometimes I want Afrobeat. I want it right in that cut. Right. So if you can solve that thing and you can build that community, that to me is where success is. And if you really understand how this algorithm is working, you got to build your community around something that unfortunately is niche. You cannot be Walmart if you don't have that kind of financial capacity, those kind of financial resources that can allow you to scale something like that that's universal, and every product is not going to be so universal that it appeals to all cultures and all races. Because I know that that's really what he meant when he was talking about just make it valuable and kind of does black on really, matter. And it's like, yeah, actually, it kind of does. Right. And I'm going to tell you for two reasons. The first reason that black on means something is because nobody is going to create something for black people better than a black person. To be clear, nobody is going to create something for black people better than a black person. Now, I'm not saying that white people can't create things that we appreciate, you know what I'm saying? But saying that someone that understands the unique space that we are in, the unique needs that we have as a people and as a culture. And I understand that, we are not a monolith, but there are some ties that bind us. And when someone is able to speak to those very unique needs that sometimes we possess, that sometimes our experience here in America has endowed us with, right? When people can address that, it adds value to us. You know what I'm saying? So that is why I think Black owned on one level, depending upon what it is, has value. But then on the next level, I think that this is one of the moments where I take this away from the producer of the product and I want to lean more into the consumer. I actually wish that Black owned did mean more to us as Black people. One thing that a lot of people overlook is that we right now generate somewhere between 1.8 and soon to be $2 trillion worth of revenue every year. That is what we contribute to the economy. And you got to ask yourself, how much of that money comes back to us? How much of that money circulates back in our communities? Very little, very little. So a lot of times, right, as we continue to move forward, right, and who knows how things are going to play out, um, regardless of whether we got more time with Trump or if it fades and then it goes into a JD Vance, like the handwriting is on the wall with how they looking at things, right? The elimination of certain things, certain programs, certain just business mechanisms that existed that were pro-Black, pro-equality. These things are being eliminated. You know what I'm saying? And so success for us is going to have to look different moving forward, right? And what that means is that we can no longer afford to just spend recklessly. We have to be more intentional with how we spend. And, I understand that we don't really have a lot of direction around this, because a lot of times people will say support Black business, but they don't really give you a blueprint. And that's what I feel we need. We need a blueprint, right? And that blueprint, I think it's a lot easier than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. The blueprint can be done with one decision, right? What if you just changing one choice that you made could dramatically affect our community? See, people don't really realize that sometimes that's how change happens. It doesn't necessarily happen in some big, major, grandiose gesture. Sometimes change happens in the inches. It happens incrementally, right? So imagine if just you making one switch, one choice, right, can change the future of how our culture moves. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is what we need to start doing is investing in our Black businesses in a very intentional way. So let's think about something that you probably buy a lot, annually, deodorant, hopefully, right? Something as small as deodorant. Imagine if you said, instead of me buying Degree or buying Old Spice, you said, let me be intentional about this. Let me see if there's any Black producers of this particular product that I can support and just try it out. Just try it out. You know what I mean? Go ahead, make the purchase, try it out, see if you like it. If you like, okay, no, this is kind of fly. If you find yourself liking it, what if you just switched out that one product? So from now on, instead of you casually just going to Walgreens, or when you find yourself at Fry's or Jewel or wherever, we don't do Target no more. So Costco, you just was like, yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and grab this Degree. What if you was like, nah, when it comes to the deodorant, I'm going to buy my deodorant from this spot. Now I get it. In the onset, it's going to be a little inconvenient. That's why I'm saying it just needs to be one item. Like, I'm not saying to totally upend your buying process. No, still do the things that you're doing, but for that one item, be intentional about that. Put it on auto ship, right? So that once a month you're getting a stick of deodorant. And it doesn't have to be deodorant, right? There's all kinds of items that exist that we purchase often. What if we just switch that one item we decided to be intentional about? We would literally create millionaires overnight. Just think about it. And everybody doesn't have to be picking the same item, right? We are generating close to $2 trillion annually. I'm not saying we got to redirect all of that trillion over to the black community. Man, they would annihilate us if we did, right? That's why we got to start this shit off slow, okay? So one item, right? So they don't see us coming. Do you know how many millionaires we would create by the end of the year? And whether or not you realize that that's then going to benefit us, right? Because the more money that we have in our community, right, that these people became millionaires because of us. So they're creating something for us. So what happens when they start to scale? Now they need to hire people, right? You think they just going to go out and start hiring like, white people, Asian people, when it's the black people, that's the reason that they successful? No, they going to want to give back. This is how that process starts, right? But it starts with you giving first. You wasn't even expecting to get nothing in return. See, this don't have to be transactional like that. You are literally sowing into someone else's world. This is how we change, right? And I guarantee you what's going to happen when you do that one product, after a couple of months, maybe a year, you realize, all right, I don't even think about that one product no more. Yeah, no, I like it. No, now I do that one product. All right, now let's make it two. What's the other product that you can switch out, right? So you see how this one decision starts to turn into, well, now you got two items that you probably, got on auto ship that you like. This ain't you just now. One thing I'm not about, this ain't no charity, right? So you try out that business. If the product sucks or you didn't like the service, you don't say, all right, fuck black business. That's not the way to go about it, right? No, at that point, then you say, you know what? All right, let me try another one. You'll be surprised how many of us that's out here doing things, man. But see, here's the thing about it. You want to know why you don't know about it? Because it's expensive as fuck to promote and to advertise. And they make it that way. You can be a content creator that's getting hundreds of thousands of views, if not millions of views on most of your posts. Put a product up in that and watch your engagement dry up. Dry up. It could be a hilarious ass video too. And see, sometimes when I used to see that, I used to think, oh man, see, that's because people don't like being sold to. In the moment that they know you selling something, then they no longer want to get engaged. And now I realize, yeah, it's a little bit of that, but it's also that algorithm, right? It's also that algorithm. They know what we saying. That's how they able to caption it. AI is reading it as it's going across. It's already encoded it. They know, oh, you trying to sell a product on my dime? Instead of buying the ad like we want you to, yeah, we're going to drive this engagement up. So that's why you don't know about the black products, because it's expensive to market, even to us. That's why we have to be intentional about it. We got to be the ones to actually do the research. And it's not hard, man. Google still works, right? And then we can even start sharing it with one another, right? If you find something that's dope, man, pass it on. But this needs to be something that as a community, we collectively are intentional about. And it don't even take everybody to do it overnight. We can get a couple thousand, couple 10,000, couple 100,000 to start doing this. Y'all, we will literally start creating millionaire businesses overnight. And it's because we shifted $10 to $15 a month, something that we were already buying. That's important, but it wasn't just like, oh my God, I have to shop degree. And I keep going back to deodorant, but seriously, I don't want to limit it to deodorant because it could be anything. It can literally be anything. I'm telling y'all, this is what I mean when I say it's time to circle the wagons, right? This is what circling the wagons mean, is that we start to look internally at how can we help one another? Not what can I get from one another? How can we help one another? As a man soweth, that shall he also reap. You're not going to get nothing if you're not giving. You got to give, man. Who gives a shit what they are doing with this administration? It's time that we change our attention. It's time we start ignoring them. It's time we don't even let them get us roused up. I just saw an article a moment ago of some young Republicans where they got a whole text chain of all of this racist stuff that they were saying in the private chat. I don't care. And neither did anybody else in this post that I saw. They was like, yeah, I'm 0% surprised. We are so unbothered. You know what I mean? And so now it's time that we start to now redirect that attention. Since we're no longer getting outraged on the bullshit, let's take that energy and start focusing on our community, right? And to be real, we making some dope products, man. We making some dope products, fashion, but not even just that. Like I said, the consumables, as they call it, right? The things that you consume frequently. That's where we get, sometimes we say support black business and it's like, oh yeah, I bought a t-shirt. Nigga, you buy t-shirts every month? Because if you are, then great. You know what I mean? But like we gotta get more strategic so that a portion of our income is generating revenue with other black owned businesses. I'm telling y'all, man, it will literally change things overnight. And that's just me being real. Now, let's shift gears to a story that had a lot of people side-eyeing the media, and for good reason. Van Jones spoke at a Jewish philanthropic event and publicly apologized for black anti-Semitism. When the moment went viral, he denied it, called black outlets and pressured them to retract their coverage. But the receipts came out and the truth wasn't on his side. So I want us to take a look at this clip that sparked it all.
At a Jewish philanthropic fundraiser and apologize for black people's anti-Semitism. When someone who was at the fundraiser tweeted out his quote, it went viral on Twitter and Van Jones denied it. Van Jones first got the dude to say that the tweet wasn't accurate. And then he called only the black publications and got them to retract the articles. When he called the place where I worked and insinuated that like, I was wrong. The tweet was wrong. We should retract the article. I was off work, so I had no idea that this was going on. But my editor said, well, no, we weren't reporting about a tweet. A source had provided the entire audio to me. He had already called where I work, talked to my bosses, and essentially called me a liar. So I released the audio. And it was exactly as we said it was.
Going to start off with an apology. Going to start off with an apology for the silence of my community and for the speech of my profession. When we now have the shock to you, the pain to you, and the humiliation to us of having an African-American icon praising Hitler and Nazis, and we act like we don't know where the hatred came from. And I want to say very clearly, when it was a drip, we did not turn it off. And now it is a flood. And I want to say to you, I apologize for the silence of my community. The silence is over, and I want to say to Kanye, who I know, yay, nay. Yay, nay.
And after Van Jones had called all those black publications, gotten them to retract articles or amend their articles, when the truth came out, Van Jones said nothing. To this day, he hadn't said a word about it because Van Jones is a liar, a certified liar. So the part that he said doesn't bother me.
You are listening to Contraband.
Okay. So, yeah, I found that to be interesting and not really completely surprised. Van Jones has kind of been wilding out for a minute, and I guess the first question I have is like, who gave Van Jones the authority to apologize on behalf of all black people, right? Like, when do we get here? You know what I'm saying? But it's like when public figures speak for us, oftentimes they are presenting themselves as though they're representing, but in most cases they're performing. And I feel like that's kind of what that was. It was a little annoying. And the reason why I'm even playing this is because, to go back to the other clip about, can black men lead? This is obviously someone with a platform who did not ask for permission before he decided to speak on behalf of all of us and apologize to the Jewish community something that wasn't a necessity. And it's just like, all right, bro, but what I did find to be fascinating is while doing that, you simultaneously try to silence the critics, right? Any dissent, which that even lets you know how he views us in many cases, that people that don't feel that connection to us don't feel the responsibility as it relates to, you know, always considering us first. I think that that's the best way to put it. I'm not someone that's talking about like hand holding, and you can hold us accountable, but nah, that ain't the kind of conversation that I would expect him to be having with other people, especially if you have not had that with us first, right? And I know that we're in a social media space, and so it's not like, we can really guard that conversation without other people being engaged. But I do believe that that was the kind of stuff that he could have been saying on his own platform and engaging with us, and then let us get into the debate, right? But to go and speak for these other organizations and, making these like wild apologies, I was just like, okay, yeah, nah, that's not ain't it, And so the question becomes like, how do we hold people accountable, when they distort things for their own reality, because essentially in that regard, yeah, I'm not down with that, and again, when we talk about these circling these wagons, man, it's fascinating because as pro-black as I am also still pro-people, and I also still acknowledge that even while simultaneously being pro-black, it doesn't necessarily mean that all black people are going to be on the same side of the wagons as I'm on, right? And that's one of the things that I think I do need to clarify. I talk about circling these wagons, but you need to understand who is an ally, right? And sometimes even people that look like us are not always allies in that regard. You know what I mean? And so the same way that there's gonna be some black people that ain't over here, I believe there's gonna be quite a few white people that are over here as well. I know that we have rescinded invitations to the cookout until you know, further notice, and I am completely on board with that, to the point where we started revoking black people's picnic privileges if you passing out these invitations. Matter of fact, they ain't just regular invitations. This is a code. And when you try to go and scan that code, it's going to say access denied, right? Because you out here wilding. So even though, we not giving away them performative, picnic invitations just because somebody knows how to dance, I do think simultaneously we need to acknowledge that there are a lot of people who have been on the right side of this, and they're going to continue to be on the right side of this. And so, you know, I know that we're still dealing with a lot of frustration and a lot of pain, as it relates to just what that last election represented for many of us, And so I think that we are very warranted to be guarded. But I do think that simultaneously, we, as much as possible, have to be cautious against alienating those that do get it, those that are doing the work and are really understanding what allyship looks like. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that allyship just means that you're under our heel or anything like that. But I do think that as we navigate these spaces, man, people gonna have to be honest with it. People gonna have to be real. Because like I said a moment ago, that whole Republican racist thread, it did not surprise me one bit. I can't even begin to tell you how much I do not care about that. You know what I'm saying? And not even in a flippant way. I don't care, because everybody that was in that thread are absolutely no different than their parents, their grandparents, and their great grandparents. And what's crazy is no matter how much it feels like we are regressing, and on some ways, I think socially we are. On many ways, this is much the same thing, right? Like, I mean, we can literally look at photographs We can literally look at photographs of people leaving church with their children, going into the town square, and looking up as a black man is hanging from a tree. And that was entertainment. That was entertainment. Like that was, just a short while ago. Like I said, you can see photographs of this, right? So this ain't, we always want to make slavery seem like it was just long way. And it's like, yeah, there was slavery, then there was Jim Crow, there's segregation. Like there's all kinds of public stuff that's happened. You know what I'm saying? Like there's still people alive today that vividly remember Emmett Till. You know what I'm saying? So for me to believe that because a couple of racist, kids, or not even kids, because they ain't kids, they call them young Republicans, man, and them they look like they got some age on them. It's like young. This nigga like he drawing a pension right now. You know what I mean? And then when you look at them too, I don't know if y'all seen them. I meant to pull a pictures up just so that you can see. I'm like, yeah, I would expect you to be racist. Yeah, because you ain't winning nowhere. So you hoping that at least, please, I need to be better than somebody. I need to hold on to something. And it's like, bro, you don't believe that. I can look at you and tell you don't believe you're better than anyone, right? This is just something fun for you all to say because you need to feel like you're a part of a group. You need to feel like you're a part of an alliance, and it's sad. It's sad to watch people be intellectually dishonest, to see how much it appears as though we have not evolved since the foolishness of, just like I said, all of those previous eras. I had that emotion recently. I was just sitting and I was just like, sometimes you just like, I cannot believe that we are really here. Like you could not have told my teenage self that, and maybe it was because I was naive. Maybe TGIF made me feel some kind of way. Maybe all the sitcoms from the 90s made it feel like we were progressing. You always saw a black person in one of the popular shows, and then we was getting so many black shows. Like I don't know if we've ever had a run like we had during those years. Like you would see a lot of successful black programming, and so I think just kind of growing up in that era and knowing about HBCUs, it just felt like there was such a high ceiling, and even though you knew that there was still some bigots out here, the really ignorant bigotry, like systemic racism is actually what holds us down, to be clear. So really I hate that more, to be honest, because that's what stops us from moving forward financially. But when they were more focused on their systemic stuff, the ignorant bigotry kind of took a back seat. So you at least didn't have to face it, because it was like, y'all know we intelligent, man. Y'all, come on, man. Y'all are consuming our art. Y'all are seeing the things that we doing, the whole nine, and so in my mind, in my ignorant 15, 18, 20-year-old mind, I'm thinking, man, if we here now, I can only imagine where we're going to be 20 years from now. I just knew he was going to be on some utopic racial shit, right? Like where we all just kicking it. We all at the same clubs because we all like hip hop, you know what I'm saying? And, more interracial couples, you know what I'm saying? We kind of letting go a lot of that bigotry from our parents because, we more woke than them. You know what I'm saying? Like it was always considered that younger people were a little more like receptive and a little more like open for just progress. It's always been that way. So to just see this whole space we're in right now, and I don't even know if I can put it on a generation, but it's like, how are we back on some boomer shit? Like, how are we back on some old, whites only fountain shit? Like really? We back here? How did we get back here? How did we get back here? And so sometimes I think as I'm thinking about that, I'm like, is this just like a glitch in the matrix? Or have you all really gotten to a space where you all have somehow like convinced yourselves that this is valuable? And so it feels like a perpetual gaslighting for me. You know what I mean? Just even watching it play out, and sometimes you almost find yourself like wanting to go back and forth with somebody in the comments. Every once in a while, maybe you do, but for the most part, you're like, nah, because that's so ignorant. Like, if you really believe that, then I really shouldn't even be talking to you. You are not worth my time. If you really have a belief that's so primitive where you believe that just because the color of your skin that you have any kind of advantage, especially intellectually, over me, regardless of whether we've read the same book, you just believe that just by virtue of you being white, if y'all still really walking around here believing that, y'all, let me tell you something, black people. If they really that stupid, we should have been took this bitch over. If they are really that stupid, we should have been took this over, right? And so the fact that we haven't means either they not that stupid or there's something that we just ain't figured out yet, because that's a very low vibrational, low IQ thing to think. I don't care if you're Elon Musk. If you believe that you are more intelligent by pure virtue of the color of your skin, you are not very bright. You just are not. You just are not. You that means that you are seeing things through such a narrow lens that you have not seen the vastness and the infiniteness of the universe. And this is across the board, right? And I love my black people. I know the areas that we are great in, but I don't place us so far above everybody else that it's just like, y'all ain't shit. You know, you don't have the capacity to this, because that is such a limit. And again, that's what I'm saying, man, as we circle these wagons, now we'll be honest, we do know that there are some people that sometimes feel predisposed to very low vibrational forms of thinking. But I think that that's more systemic than anything. I honestly believe that that is a byproduct of unregulated, unchecked power, right? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Point blank, period, right? So anybody that gets in that space of absolute power that does not have the humility of recognizing your flaws, right? That is a dangerous space. And so most times, man, like I said, bigotry comes through a space of ignorance, right? And like I said, we should be taking advantage of it. We should be taking advantage of it. That's all I'm gonna say, man. But this next segment, and this is, one of the few that we're before we close, we're closing with this story from Brian Stevenson, who is one of the most brilliant legal minds in the country. He's argued cases before the Supreme Court, built institutions that change lives, and yet he tells a story about being mistaken for a defendant in court simply because he's a black man. So what struck me the most wasn't the disrespect, it was what he had to do next that was a little jarring, right? So what we're going to call this is the cost of composure. So I want you to listen to this.
Harvard Law School. I've got a lot of degrees and awards. I've won cases at the U.S. Supreme Court, and I've been in courtrooms representing clients, getting there early, sitting at defense counsel's table, where the judge will walk in and immediately get mad at me. The judge will look at me and say, hey, you get back out there in the hallway. I don't want any defendant sitting in my courtroom without their lawyer. And I have to stand up and say, well, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I am the lawyer. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Brian Stevenson. I have to try to de-escalate this situation. And I was doing that recently. I was in a courtroom in the Midwest, and the judge started laughing, but it wasn't an apologetic laugh. And it kind of angered me. And the prosecutor started laughing. They thought it was so funny. And I was sitting there getting angry. And then I thought, oh no, Brian, you can't get angry. You need to smile. You may need to laugh. And I felt that way. I thought that way because my client was not going to be able to leave that county. I was able to leave that county and never come back based on the way I was treated if I chose to do that. But my client was going to have to stay there. So when they were laughing, I smiled. And then I eventually chuckled. Client came in, we did the hearing. But I remember sitting in my car after that hearing thinking, wow, here I am, this middle-aged black man. I'm in my best suit. I actually argued the case at the Supreme Court that we were trying to implement. I've got all of these degrees and awards, and I'm still required to laugh at my own humiliation to do justice for my client. That's not right. That's not fair. And I'm getting old enough to know that when you have to constantly navigate presumptions of dangerousness and guilt because of your color, when you have to tell your children how to survive a police encounter, what to do and what not to do, how they can't do the things that their white friends can do because they're going to be burdened with this presumption, when you have to constantly navigate this world, it's exhausting. And I want something better. I want something better for everybody. And that's why the commitment to truth-telling, the commitment to building institutions that help us understand the harms of history is such a priority.
Okay. Listen, man. There ain't nothing I love more, man, is an intelligent person, man. Like straight up. Man or woman, man. There ain't nothing I love more, man, is an intelligent person. And there have been a couple of things lately in the news that kind of feel like we getting back to that space, and that's fun for me, right? Because we've been on some dumb shit for a minute, okay? We have really, really been deeply relishing stupidity, and it feels like intellectualism is we're swinging back. And for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, Mark Lamont Hill had an exchange on the Joe Budden podcast that has been getting heavy rotation, and I know it's more multifaceted, and I don't want to go into it because I don't want to pile on, but it was just nice to see an intellectual sparring and kind of holding his own, because I think that we've gotten to the space, man, where we've made being intelligent uncool, being vulnerable and emotionally aware uncool, and it feels like as Black people, but specifically Black men, we have been exalting some of the not best qualities of ourselves, and I'm not here to even just judge the totality of us, man, but I just feel like we are so nuanced and we have the potential for so much greatness. But in pop culture, the main things that get projected about us are sometimes the unsavory things. And I know that we all have unsavory elements about us. I just don't understand why we collectively celebrate it. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes that's a choice. Like we can try to blame the man, or we could try to blame, that's what they invest in. And it's like, yeah, that is what they invest in. But on some level, there has to be a culpability on our part to not only be willing to put ourselves out there like that, but that we're the ones that's oftentimes circulating the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Because us as a community, we can start checking the nonsense, right? We can start calling out the bullshit, like not only amongst our peers, but even like publicly. You know what I'm saying? I feel like one of the reasons that we in this space right now, even politically, is because too many real niggas is letting weak niggas get off. You know what I'm saying? And this is above just Black people. Like there are people right now that should have been ridiculed out of their position of authority, but we keep giving this space for weakness, right? And it's like authentic power either is not speaking up, or it's apathetic. I don't know what it is. Or maybe we've just gotten to a space where the algorithm is dictating what we value as a community. And oftentimes, like I said, that the algorithm is programmed. You know what I mean? And so that typically is what we see push the most, but I've said this oftentimes in the past, man, like I want to start seeing more of us be active. Those of us that feel differently, I want us to start being more active. And it don't even have to turn into us being confrontational, man. Sometimes it could be about us just like checking one another, man, like on some simple shit, you know what I'm saying? And just like calling one another to the carpet, not because you affronted me or you made me feel some kind of way, but calling you to the carpet because I genuinely want to see you do better, right? I think you are better, right? We got to start speaking to the God in one another again, right? And just like calling out the bullshit. But I digress. This particular clip, it brought up a couple of things that I thought was interesting, right? And I'm just sitting there thinking like, man, like, have you ever had to smile through something that broke your spirit? Right? Like I know me, and like I think on some level we've part of being an adult, but then also being a man sometimes is uh learning that balance of restraint and utilization of your power, right? I remember a conversation happening one time, and it was at one of the tequila tales where we were talking about um, one of the reasons that sometimes even men don't call one another out. And, one of the things that we came up with was just because there's always the threat of violence inside of our interaction. Like, we are aware of that as men, not even just black men, just men in general, because we are ever so aware that if this continues to escalate, it ends in violence, because we know that oftentimes it can cause some of us to be passive, right? Not because we're weak, but because I don't know how far I can go back and forth with you before we cross that imaginary barrier. And now we in that space. And so that was even part of what happened in the clip with Dr. Lamont Hill and Queen's Flip on the Joe Budden podcast. Like, it had gotten heated. They were exchanging something that Queen's Flip said. Dr. Hill took as a challenge or disrespect, and he just politely but firmly, very firmly said, "Oh no, don't call me a sucker." And so, there was a bit of an exchange, but he was leaning into it to just make it clear, like, look, I know we having a heated discussion, but I'm not going to tolerate this disrespect. And he got to the point where, like, cats was standing up. And I heard a new term that I didn't know exists. I mean, are we gonna pod? Are we gonna pod, or are we gonna step outside? I was like, oh shit, that's what y'all calling it now. Is that what I'm doing right now? Is this a pod? Like, oh, okay, I'm pod. I was like, all right, well, let's get back to pod. Okay. I didn't know that was the new term. That was the new drip. Sorry. They decided to keep podding, but it popped real quick. And sometimes that is what can happen inside of an interaction, even amongst intellectuals, right? Like, it can escalate quickly. And as much as I want to act like I'm above it or beyond it, nope. I guilty as charged, man. I know that side of me. I've seen it come out about 7 times in my life, man, to the point I've given it a name. I literally call that side of me the warrior, because when it takes over, it's like an out of body experience, man. And it's wow. It's like blackout mode. You know what I'm saying? And it's to the point where I've had literal out of body experiences where the conscious part of me was standing outside of my body, looking at me, wilding out, kind of freaking out a little bit, like wanting to calm me down. But then it became like this, like, energy self-perpetuating thing where it was almost like I literally could not stop. And I was ready to go wherever we were supposed to go. It's and sometimes I'm able to catch myself, but because I know that side exists, because I tell people I don't have a quick temper, but I have a short temper, right? So it may take me a long time to get there, but when I pop, you typically ain't gonna see it coming, because I'm not the type that like ramps up and then is I was trying to hold it in. I was trying to keep it back in. I was trying to compress it. And then by the time it finally comes out, it erupts. You know what I'm saying? So because of that, I've had to learn myself, you know what I'm saying, which is when I feel it and I can feel like the heart beating fast, I have to try to do situations to de-escalate myself, right? Rather be removing myself from that moment or just whatever. Hopefully you're around people where you can just argue it out. You know what I'm saying? But that takes trust. You know what I'm saying? Because yeah, man, it can go there, especially, man, when we all got this repressed shit in us, not even just from, but just from life. You know what I mean? It's a lot of anger out there in the ether. And so, you can get caught. You can get caught. And that's why we calling it crashing out now, which is a funny term because it's real, right? You can very easily crash out nowadays, man, and it can come out of the blue, and so because of that, and because we are aware as men that threat always looms, a lot of times, man, we have to learn how to manage it. And so even in this situation with this Harvard guy, like, yeah, just because he Harvard, he intellectual, don't mean he no bitch. You know what I'm saying? And his pride made him want to just be like, all right, man, listen, judge, he wanted to say some shit. But then he knew, if I say something, and this is a judge, right? And a white judge at that, regardless of the judge, you cuss the judge out. You nigga. Yo, you just condemned your client to life over a parking ticket. You know what I'm saying? And then he probably, it was a black dude that he was defending too. Oh man, you had to have the patience of Job. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Like, just what you had to eat in that moment to do what was best. You had to endure what kind of posed itself as a humiliating scenario. Right now, in all actuality, it really wasn't humiliating if he got centered and realized and was able to remove his ego from the situation. If you can remove your ego from the situation, man, you can be powerful because you don't care about y'all laughing, whatever, dude. I'm trying to get this dude off. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that does take a higher spiritual level of elevation. You got to really have your flesh mastered in order to be in some situations and eat it like that, and some of us can and have, for the good of, our family, for the safety of our loved ones. You know what I'm saying? We can't always wild out, you know. I feel like even when it came to Obama, man, like a lot of y'all don't realize that, like, that's who Obama was, right? Like, I'm taking this, man. I gotta take it. Because if I wild out, like, I know what y'all want me to do. I know y'all want reparations. I know y'all want me to stick it to Wall Street. I know y'all want this and this and this and this. But I literally was a freshman senator. Half of these cats don't even know me. I'm a black man with the name Barack. You know what I mean? And even though we got a majority, these cats are feeling a little funny because even the Democrats probably can't believe that a black dude is in this position before they are. So they low key a little jealous. Just because we Democrats don't mean that they all just like fell in line. That ain't even how the left move. The left cannibalizes itself. You see it now. I didn't even know it was so many versions of a Democrat until after Kamala lost. Right? Until after she lost, then all of a sudden it's like it's leftists, it's liberals, it's this, it's that. And then you let Trump tell it, it's Antifa. You know what I mean? It's radical Antifa. It's like you just making up shit. And it's like, no, y'all the ones with all the segments, but now they trying to splinter up. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, okay, this is ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And y'all wanted that black man to go up in there and be Marcus Garvey. Fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? It don't even make sense. So sometimes those of us in position of leadership, we got to know how to take it on the chin, man. We got to think beyond the moment, man. We playing the long game. We can't play the short game, man. You can't do the thing that's going to make you feel good in that moment, because that's bad strategy. Do you want to fight? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to win? And sometimes winning means, man, that you taking some hits, you taking some bruises, man. And I get it, man. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that, as black people, because we feel like we've taken enough, right? And as we tired of being the punching bags of the nation. Like I said earlier, giving so much value for free, right? Because we don't monetize our greatest gift. Everybody is able to come over in this bitch and monetize what their culture does. If you Asian, man, they setting up shops and they got, nail salons and dry cleaners and whatever, even the Africans do these different things or whatever, right? But when it comes to American descendants of slaves, we just creating and giving, right? And there's reasons for that. And it's not just because we don't desire more. It's because of our lack of any foundation ever really existing. And then also, if I might add, there were several times where we did do it and they collectively destroyed those communities that were showing they knew how to work together. So let's also expose that myth that black people don't know how to work together. The hell we don't. Black Panthers was us working together. Low key, most of the gangs in Chicago and LA started as organizations that were working together. They were having food drives, right? Like, yeah, they might have been engaging in some illegal activities once that became known, but there was still structure. You know what I'm saying? Most of these things, if you really go into the history of how like a lot of these gangs, were initiated, it came off the Black Power movement and our community attempting to regulate itself, right? To police itself. And so we did have hierarchy, we did have structure, and they came in and they dismantled that shit. Because if we start moving too independently, we'd be like the Jewish people here in America. See, because you see how they do, right? But see, the difference between Jewish people and us is that they've always had a space that they can call theirs outside of here, right? Like there's a foundation, a space there. Us here from slaves, yeah, we might know we come from Africa, but we don't have that root. You know what I'm saying? So we are the only people without a physical like country or continent where we can say we come from. You know what I'm saying? And so they've always been able to do things to us without fear of retribution. And you can't do that to other places. But make no mistake about it. If Black people really started like learning how to do this thing, man, and circulating this money and operating inside of ourselves, man, and like managing ourselves. Yeah, man. They don't want to see that, man. They don't want to see that. But I do believe that this brother Brian Stevenson, man, it was like I said, that was powerful, man, because it just really showed you, to harken back to something we were talking about earlier tonight, shows you what leadership looks like, right? So with that clip from Bakari Sellers, he didn't ask a Black woman permission before he did what he needed to do to help his client, which sometimes is taking it, right? See, leadership don't always look like glory. Leadership ain't gonna always put you in the space where you get all the likes and the shares and you get all the fanfare. You know what I'm saying? So if being a leader for you is contingent upon constant praise, then you don't really understand what it means to be a leader, because the leader is actually worried about the team, right? When the team eat, you eat. You know what I'm saying? And please believe that the people that you're building up and the people that you're supporting and the people that you holding down, those are the only likes that you need to be seeking to obtain. Who cares about this artificial social media bullshit? You know what I'm saying? It's time that we get back to the family. You know what I'm saying? And that's why when you really do find your spouse, your wife, you know what I'm saying, the person that's going to hold you down, and you start building your family, right? Like what they think about, what they care about, if they good and what they care about should be the only thing that's most important. You know what I'm saying? You should need the public praise collectively, a pat on the back, a attaboy. I see you, Black man. You know what I mean? Like, because it don't always come like that. Eventually it does, but we can't manage our actions based upon constant praise. You know what I'm saying? Because to be clear, the praise that Black women are receiving right now is not because of something that they started doing a year or two ago. It's because of like decades of them grinding, decades of them making sacrifices, decades of them not doing things that they wanted to do and taking it from all angles and all areas and still persevering to the point where now they find themselves at a space where they can move forward and collectively we recognize as a unit. Damn, they making some moves. And it's reasons for that. It's not because of some praise that they have not earned. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I was getting at in that clip. Like, we should not desire praise that we have not earned yet. And you don't need permission for that. You don't need permission to give. You don't need permission to give, man. It's not necessary. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like when we request that or require that, man, that ends up being what can hinder us, is needing that before we give our value to others. So this is what I'm gonna close on. And I just want y'all to see this, in this segment of some shit you should see, okay? I just happen to run past this, man. Sometimes my news feed, on one of these platforms be cooking, right? I hate to admit that the algorithm does what it does, but I was actually impressed by this. And so I was like, you know what, man? I'm gonna let y'all see this. I started to put this in my segment, Why You Mad? But this actually is more some shit you should see. So I want you to check this out.
Operator, the one thing that I'm sick of hearing from white farmers is how you're struggling. Excuse me, my people not only struggle, the USDA objectively spent more money trying to keep black farmers out of farming than to actually help us. Meanwhile, white farmers were not only getting land, you're getting conservation payments. Do you even know what that is? The white farmers and their families for generations were given land, and they will be paid to not farm that land. Because it's for conservation, it's for environmentalism. The same white MAGA farmers who vote against climate change initiatives, who vote in favor of policies that harm the environment, are now the same crybaby bitches who are crying about them not getting conservation payments. Excuse me, you don't even believe in environmentalism, but you want payments for not farming your own land. You want payments for not working your land. You want payments for being lazy. You want payments for being white. That is the usual suspect, the usual problem in this country. The reason why we spend so much money on freaking farmers and subsidies is because of white farmers. Because black farmers don't even ask the freaking USDA for anything because we know better. You want to know why? For generations, the USDA has done nothing but help white farmers get them land, get them conservation payments, help them with animals, help them get freaking education, mechanize their freaking farm equipment. You do all that shit, and now you want to come to me saying, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I've been doing that, and that's why I'm not struggling like you are. That's why. You want to know why? Because when you give a man a freaking fish, he will eat for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he will eat for a damn lifetime. And guess what the U.S. government has been doing with freaking white farmers? You've been giving out a whole lot of fish. You gave out the whole ocean's worth of damn fish. And now all of a sudden you can't do anything to function on your own. On your own. And the way that we know that you have focused so hard on getting subsidies from the U.S. government is that your crops reflect that. Your crops reflect that. Without your slaves, without your cheap labor from freaking Mexico and Honduras and Ecuador and Brazil, without your illegal immigrant slaves, your ass is falling. The reason why so many farm hands get paid so little is because it's been taken over by white farmers who were used to having slaves. So guess what? They don't want to pay top price to damn farm hands. So it's up to black farmers to actually pay people to actually farm the land, to actually be self-sufficient. Unlike the privileged, bullshit ass, crybaby ass white farmer. I've never got what the hell you've gotten. So stop crying.
Man, let me tell you something, man. That was, oh my goodness, man. That was the kind of move. That was the kind of crash out that, like, it put the battery in my back. 2025 for me has been a great year, fantastic year, but it's been so exhausting. I know y'all can see it on my face, man. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. I got a toddler, right? I got a toddler, and like he active now, man. Handsome little dude too, man. Husky, but listen, he got a couple words on him too. So you know the way I talk, so you know this nigga talking. You know what I'm saying? He moving, he jumping all over stuff. Like he is one of the joys of my life. Okay, but he is exhausting, right? So as a result, I ain't really been in the gym the way I should have been, and I have been in years past, but I feel this motivation, so I'm gonna start back this week, right? Hella hot water, man. And I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna be consistent. And I'm big on music, so I always listen to music. But I think I'm gonna just go to that man's page and I'm just going to listen to him. moving forward. I'm gonna just download some of his mixtapes because the way he was talking, okay, I know it was all kind of spit on that phone when he got finished, okay, because my man was going in. Right, my man was going in, but he was eating. That's that kind of crash out. That is that kind of outrage that I absolutely love, right? Because that was real. That was real, and even though it's about farming, right? It's man, listen, man. I know y'all get it. I know y'all get it. And I know many of us, we see it, And one of the things I tell my wife a lot, I can't really call out specifically what it's gonna be. But even despite all of this nonsense that's been happening since really November and definitely since February, right? You can feel the weight. You can feel the weight, and sometimes the future feels bleak. But I always tell her, like, man, this ain't gonna play out the way that they think it is, man. And I think that the end it might surprise us, man. And I can't really call it out and know exactly what it's gonna be, but I know what the energy is, right? I know what y'all are trying to do, and this is not going to play out the way y'all think it is, right? Because what y'all might do, and all of these attempts of pushing us down, right? All you all are doing is one, sacrificing yourselves. Because that's the wild thing about it. And that is the wild thing about just even what the embodiment of Trump is. Like, the embodiment of Trump is self-sacrifice. That these people voted for him because they were more concerned about what was going to happen to someone else than the benefit that they were going to get. Right? They were more concerned about someone else being lower than them being up. And that's a karma move right there, man. That is a karma move because you made an investment in something. And that investment that you made is going to yield a crop, right? It always does. You planted a seed, and a harvest is going to grow from that seed that you planted. So while you were trying to destroy some other people, while you were trying to cause some carnage in someone else's world, while you were trying to make something heavy for someone else, it's going to backfire. And it's going to be very, very heavy on you. And the unfortunate part about many of these people is that they are not equipped to handle this weight. They are not. They have not been in the gym the way we have. We've been in the gym our entire lives. We bear the muscles from our ancestors. That's why I don't like when people are like, we ain't our ancestors. The fuck we are not. I am my ancestors. And that is their greatest nightmare, is that you might be your ancestors. So we're going to stop saying that. We're going to stop saying that today, because you are your ancestors. And that is what's going to allow us, if we keep our head in the game, to really take this shit to another level. Because when times are hard and they are lost and they are not accustomed of how you navigate through having to tighten the purse straps a little bit, right? Of having to do without a little something, right? Because you heard what that man said. That a lot of the reasons that they are having an issue, listen, let me tell you, I didn't even know this, all right? And I keep my ear to the ground. I'm like, oh, shit. So I need to, okay, so you're telling me that you got some farmers out here that's been probably making millions of dollars each year, but the reality of it is that they probably had a massive amount of land that they were paid to not grow anything on. And then other crops that really weren't producing, but they were being subsidized by the government. I'm like, yep, that's some white people shit. If there was ever some white people shit, that is some white people shit. They do that in Hollywood. I'm going to buy your script so nobody else can make it. I'm going to buy it so I can table it. You know what I mean? And so if their goal was white supremacy, right? And, redistributing the money, because I also need these red states to vote for me. And so, you don't have a lot of black, even though black farmers like that, that's what we was doing in slavery. Like, honest to God, coming out of Reconstruction, that's why so many black people were so successful after Reconstruction, is because we actually had the skill set. We had the skill set. White people didn't have the skill set that we had. So coming out, because we were blue collar and we knew how to do these things, we were benefiting. That's why they had to bring in Jim Crow. They was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And we didn't even get the 40 acres and a mule. We just knew how to do shit, right? So that's the world that we in. If you know how to do things, if you know how to endure a little bit of discomfort, If you know how to tighten them purse straps, you can come up. You can come up, right? But let me tell you what we gonna have to stop doing. It is where the shit gets real, okay? Because we might have to tighten them up. Y'all can't be out here buying that bullshit as Balenciaga and Gucci and Prada and spending all your money. Nah. First off, it's a lot of black people out. It's a lot of black designers making some cold ass shit. I'm gonna need y'all to get out there and start buying. Find them. Choose one. I need y'all to get out there and find some people that's making some things that you think is dope. We need to get back in that space where we are dictating what's dope to the culture. That's what we used to do. I don't even know when we stopped. I came up, man, with, because it started with the white stuff, right? Like, we had to get what we can get, so we was rocking Jabos, cross colors, Tommy Hilfiger, and then they said he was racist, even though he never said that thing, right? I see some of y'all watching this, y'all probably think that he said that racist shit, that he didn't like black people wearing his clothes. No, he never said that. Like, that was just something that I think the ops said. Whoever's Tommy Hilfiger's ops was back then, that's what they said. That never really happened, But then black people got some money, man. What we started doing, man? We started creating our own brands, man. That was a big, man, Rockaware. And Sean John, is jacked up because we now realize what my man's was on. But FUBU, we show what happens when we start supporting our own. You know what I'm saying, man? We got to get back to that space, because y'all out here, man, spending a lot of ridiculous money on high fashion, man. And them people typically don't like us wearing their shit. You know what I'm saying? They like the attention, but no, that's foolish. As a community, man, we got to get back to this space where we determine what's cool, right? And that's why when you talk about choose one, that's what that comes down to. Because if you choose one thing and we start making these things in the black community pop, it ain't gonna stay black owned. It's gonna stay black owned, but it ain't gonna just be us that's supporting it, because we determine what the drip is. We determine what's cool. So what happens when we start producing the product and supporting the product, and then we are the ones that create the culture? Boom. You know what I'm saying? And this is across the board, man. But this is what I believe, man, we're gonna have to do. So, like I said, I wanted to end on that note of just, like I said, some righteous outrage, right? Because that pretty much is what that was. That was righteous outrage of someone that was pretty much making it known, like, yo, y'all been lying, man. Y'all been lying and making it seem like y'all out here winning. And the reality of it is that y'all always had an inside track. You always had access to some funding that I didn't have. You always knew the cheat code. You always had the person that knew how to prepare the taxes to write off all that other shit, or to make some dummy company, or to do something, finagle something where you were able to dodge around all these expenses. You also had access to the resources. So you were given the money up front. You got a chance to play with somebody else's money who just said, I believe in you. And when you lost it all, they gave you some more to play with. But then DEI was causing issues with society. All right, y'all. You know what I mean? Let me stop, man, because y'all already get it, man. Y'all already get it. But, yeah, it's as always, man. As always, it's been just an amazing pleasure, man, to be able to pull up, like I said in the onset of the show. It's been awesome having this partner with blackdoctor.org, and them giving me the latitude, man, to even speak, and for trusting me to, be responsible. I know I might push it, and sometimes maybe even the language might be a little bit more than, actually, they might not even care. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? I just know I'm probably the only person on their platform that's cussing, but nonetheless, you know what I'm saying? Like, they rocking with me, and I love it because it's about Black health, right? And how else do we build our health if we don't build our relationships, right? And if we don't communicate, and so it really has been awesome, man, having this opportunity to plug in from week to week. If you all aren't doing so already, man, definitely follow me on the platforms, right? Who is Isaac Paul? Actually, you know what? I actually changed it. This is Isaac Paul on Instagram, and follow the YouTube. You know what I'm saying? The YouTube is really where, you can make certain that you get tapped into all the stuff that I'm doing, right? Because that is really where a lot of my attention, has been growing. But yeah, no, man, I ain't going nowhere, right? I ain't going nowhere, and it's nice. I've been appreciating patronage, man. People that pull in, I love your feedback. I love the engagement. I want to ask y'all continue to do that, and man, let your people know if you feeling it, man, share it. That's the best way you can show some love, because like that's what I told y'all, man. Like it's hard reaching new people. You gotta pay for that shit all the time. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you could be doing some dope shit, man, and just be flying under the radar. But y'all know some people. So show the love, man, and share it, man. But until the next time, man, this has been awesome, and I want y'all to be well.